this for a while, and I don't know, I was just waiting for the right time, and I guess this is the right time. So many of my friends have started really thinking about the idea of homeschooling, especially homeschooling in California, right? With all of the new mandates and changes that have happened. So couple of things. Yay, it's exciting. I'm excited for you on this journey that you're gonna be embarking on. So there are a couple of different ways to homeschool in the state of California. I personally am enrolled in a public charter. So we have a teacher, or ours at our school is called an educational specialist. We meet with her every 20 school days. I go through and mark different state standards for each of my children that they are hitting during this 20 school day period of time. And then I submit 2 pieces of work from each child in each subject of the 4 major subjects into a Google Drive with her. So that way she can put together our portfolio for the end of the year, and they keep that on file for the state if there's ever an audit. So with some of the hoops to jump through with that, right? One of the benefits is we get funding. So instead of my child going to a brick and mortar school and the funding going to that school, this funding goes to the public charter school to pay for teachers and other things, but it also gives us a stipend for curriculum. So you can go on and use your curriculum funds for non-sectarian curriculum. So it can't have any religious undertones that the school's going to pay for. Now, if you choose to use religious based curriculum, you just have to pay for that yourself. And then you just have to make sure that whatever you're submitting as those 2 pieces of work just don't include a religious belief structure, which not a big deal. Sometimes even with the books that we're using right now, I don't have like a really great sample to provide for science or social studies. And so sometimes I just go on to Google Images and find a good worksheet or a Teachers Pay Teachers, education.com, or ask my teacher for something that might fit what should fit into this category. And she's super helpful with that. So another way to do homeschooling in the state of California is to file a private school affidavit, and that's called a PSA. I'm going to share a screen for just a second. So HSLDA is an organization that kind of protects homeschoolers, and it's a national organization. So this is a map of kind of regulation in different states. And believe it or not, California actually falls in the low regulation for homeschooling. Those eastern states, sorry about that. But California is a pretty flexible state to homeschool in. So if we click on it, it talks about the requirements and the ways to homeschool. And then you can go into more detail, and it'll talk about, it'll give you more information about what's really required of you. One of which is to create a portfolio. And I was talking to one of my good friends about this the other day with her first grader, who's reading above grade level, who, if they did absolutely nothing this year, her child would be absolutely fine, because they already homeschool. They just now are doing it officially, right? This friend already does craft projects with her first grader and has taught her how to read, and they do baking together and arts and crafts together, and she turns it into learning situations. They already read about hot air balloons, and now we're going to New Mexico to see hot air balloons. So we talked about how for her portfolio, maybe you take photos of all these different things that you're doing and create a big scrapbook, right? How fun is that? And then you've got your child who's in first grade cutting, right, to create the scrapbook, and takes a little bit of ownership with it as well. So kind of just a fun journey of your year of the things that you've been learning. And maybe those math pages that you worked really hard on that are really good and really cover what the bigger bodies decide is really more relevant for that school year. Maybe you include that math page that they really just did their best work on and put that in your scrapbook, right? So it doesn't have to be overwhelming and daunting. There are charter subsets for homeschooling through your traditional school system. So So ours here, Folsom Cordova, has a homeschool segment. And my understanding from last when I checked on it was it's really traditional schooling at home. And so they're talking to those teachers more frequently, but all the same busy work is all the same, right? Who wants stinking busy work? Okay. And now you might tell me you don't have the patience for this. Girlfriend, I think ever since like 6th grade, I used to say that patience is a virtue that I just don't have, right? Like when we talk about fruits of the spirit, patience being one of those that like I've never had, like ever, ever. Okay. But my ADHDer in kindergarten, we were fighting over coloring in the stupid coloring paper because it said it wanted you to color box number 2 black, and she didn't want to color the box black. Well, I don't even care if you color the picture. I know you can color. I know you can color in the lines. I know you know what your colors are. So why do you have to color this picture to check a box? You don't. And that is one of the wonderful things about homeschooling is, yeah, we fight. I don't know if you've met my 11-year-old, mini me. So when you think about patience and like we butt heads like none other. But when we butt heads about stuff like this, it's about stuff that I can sit down and say, well, I think this is important for you to learn and this is why, rather than I completely agree. That's busy work that I don't even want to spend my time and energy fighting with you to complete. And her teacher was so sweet and was like, just write a note and you don't have to do it. Except guess what? She had parents grading the homework. So my child would end up with a 0. Can we just say that that wasn't working for me? And yes, there are days that my child does not like me as their teacher, right? Like every day. We went to a friend's house recently as school was getting ready to start, and her daughter was super bummed because she didn't get the teacher that she wanted, right? She wasn't going to be in the front class with the rest of her friends. And I just kind of chuckled and was like, my kids didn't get the teacher they wanted either. Got me. But with homeschooling, we have the flexibility to do things that we need to do and when we need to do them. And some days, Wednesdays, we go roller skating. Why not? It's a great opportunity to see our friends. It's for them to interact with other people. They're learning how to roller skate. And hello, it's not people-y like a Saturday. Because I'm sorry, Saturdays at the roller rink, way too people-y for me. I really don't like big groups. I like to sit quietly and just kind of mind myself and just like watch and listen. So Saturdays don't work for me at the roller rink. Okay. So you don't think that your children will listen to you. You're going to fight with them. If you're like me, you will. But you're going to fight over things that matter. And you're going to find moments in which maybe we just don't do a lesson right now. Maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe we just stop what we're doing and we go to the park. Because they're tired of these same walls. I'm tired of these same walls. We just need to get out of here. And guess what? You can, right? Poor Jack had a fever. Okay, rest up, buddy. And then he was throwing up. Okay, rest up, buddy. But today he's feeling better. So he did some reading. And guess what? We didn't start on a first day of school. We started during the summer because why not? And sometimes on the weekend, we do more work. It just kind of evens out because it becomes a lifestyle. So I feel like a lot of my groups right now are becoming inundated with, I'm homeschooling, what curriculum do I use? Girl, breathe. There is a transition time, and that transition time is you figuring out what's going to work best for you, what's going to work best for your child, and what's going to work best for your family. Okay. So if you have just pulled your children from school and filed a private school affidavit or whatever, take a breath. Okay. Go think about doing the idea of year-round school, right? So take a week off. Go do something fun. Go enjoy each other and connect with each other, right? Do something fun. Come to the roller rink with me. But this book, this is a book that I read early on when we were homeschooling Kaylee. And it is a short little weekend read, right? It's all of 62 pages, and that's with the final thoughts. Okay. But it's really about the idea, especially if you're starting at kindergarten, you have 12 years, right? And I know that I get into the cycle of that I want to teach them. I want them to learn this and that and everything in 1 year. And that's not possible. Like you go and you think back to your own education, right? And you think back to 6th grade, right? Actually, oh yeah, let's go 6th grade. So maybe you studied some world history in 6th grade. And then you studied again in 9th grade. And then you studied it again in college. And you studied it earlier on, right? So a lot of these things, especially social studies, is really just repetitive. It's cyclic. You go through, you hit it, you come back and you cycle in a little bit deeper and you cycle in a little bit deeper. And let me tell you, there's a lot of people that apparently didn't pay attention to any of this growing up. So your kids aren't going to miss anything. But one of the best things about homeschooling is that you get to pick up on what interests them, right? So maybe this year, they're not interested in world history. Maybe you look at US history, or maybe you do look at world history, and maybe you look at it in a different aspect, right? So, and that's one of the conversations that I like to have with people, right? Because you can't just throw a curriculum at somebody and then be like, okay, I'm going to do this. It's hard. There is when we were looking at 1st grade math books, 1st grade, I counted 65 different math books, math curriculums, 65. Because you have mastery based, you have spiral based, you have kind of a story based. You just have so many different ones. You have ones that use manipulatives. You have ones that are just textbooks. There's so many different things to choose from. So there are websites out there, kathyduffy.com, I believe, and she provides a test that your child can take and that you can take. And it helps kind of look at learning styles and teaching styles, right? Because they might learn really well this way, but you might teach really well this way. So you're like, I'm going to teach this way, but it doesn't really meet their need. And then there's what works for the family, right? I love the idea of unit studies. I love, 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 love them. And they would work for our family. They don't work for me. I cannot, for the life of me, sit down and do a unit study for all 3 of them going through the same thing, which is totally beneficial. Hello, we're all going to do the same thing for social studies. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit differently with Jack, or whatever worksheet he does is a little bit different than what Kaylee does. And she's going to write a little bit more and go deeper and more in depth with things. That makes sense. Me, can't make it work for the life of me. I did when Kaylee was in kindergarten. That seemed to work better, but I just can't. It just doesn't work for me. And that's okay. When Kaylee transitioned back in 3rd grade, we learned that the math curriculum that we were using, and get this too, right? So the more kids you homeschool, you start to realize, because you plant these seeds, right? That I'm not good at this, not good at this. It takes 2 to tango. So not going to say my child's a bad homeschooler, but one of my children really thrives with it and does really well. And another one maybe struggles a little bit more. But guess what? She struggled in traditional school either way. So now we're just really meeting her where she's at. And if that's behind where her peers are, that's fine, because we're getting to understand this content before we move forward. Because what's the point of moving forward if you don't understand it, especially if math, right? Like, let's get it. So yeah, we're a little behind in math for her. Whatever. We're going to keep trekking on through it, and we're going to keep going on through summer, because that's just kind of what you have to do. And yeah, so I wanted to go through some other things, right? So Magic Treehouse, amazing book series. So if you've got younger kids, This is a principle that I got from Scholastic. And hello, if you homeschool, you can get teacher IDs like through HSLDA. And then you can get into Scholastic and have a teacher account. Just saying. But so you can create a whole passport with the different books, and there's different kind of worksheets to do with it. But like the Nights at Dawn, my favorite one was the Vacation Under the Volcano. So we did volcanoes, we learned about all of those. We watched some different videos on volcanoes and learned about pumice stone and how that was created. And then it kind of went into weather. And to this day, the kid still talks about cumulonimbus clouds and the other types of clouds. I can't remember what they are, but she can tell you what they are because she definitely remembers them. And then you have things like Usborne, Usborne, and you have a friend that probably sells these. I don't, but they are really great. And a lot of the different curriculums that you find out there, especially the boxed curriculums, really do use Usborne books. So take a look at like whatever you're wanting to go through. And a lot of them will have QR codes that open up to bigger, to videos and more information. And really, so you could use this as the younger breakdown, and then you can go deeper. And they have big World War II ones. So it's not like just itty bitty pictures, like they have textbooks too. Evan Moore is what we really used a lot last year of. So this is a reading comprehension one. So you read, you answer the questions, and they have them through all different grades. There's tons of different products that they have with these. I still am using reading informed text for all three of them, but because it's taking you through that text, you're highlighting different things, you're answering, you've got vocabulary, and then you're writing about it. IEW is what I have fallen in love with this year. And they have a whole kind of program within itself. And then I kind of last minute signed them up for this All Things Fun and Fascinating Zoom class through a local curriculum store, which has been really nice. And so they meet on Zoom and they go through and they're doing writing, they're checking it. I'm submitting that through Google Classroom with them. And they only meet once a week. So it's not like overly committed. And I love that it's taking them deeper into their writing. And both girls are doing the same class because they're both at different levels and I'm meeting them where they're at. So they happen to be taking the same one. And you know what? They're having fun. And my child who hates writing is writing and isn't hating it. So IEW, I have fallen in love with them. Fix It Grammar is their grammar program. So simple, okay? Right, and it builds on itself. So they recommend that everybody starts on book 1 to just build those basics and you can fly through it faster. So Kaylee's moving through it faster than Jillian. But they go through and they mark the different parts of speech. They correct, the end market because we're still in the earlier part of the book. They're learning about who, which clauses. They're learning pronouns, verbs, articles and how nouns follow articles or an adjective between the noun and the article. Okay. And they say that if you can get through book 3, you know more grammar than most adults out there because most of us suck at it. I suck at it. Okay, but so with Fix It Grammar, they take their one sentence and they transcribe it into a notebook. And as they continue with their one sentence, it forms the story, the nose tree is what we're working on. And then in the back, they take the vocabulary words and look up the word in the dictionary and create their own glossary. So I like it. And that's the thing. So many times I see parents feel like they're not doing enough. Girl, breathe. Your child is in a classroom for 6-8 hours a day because there's time to redirect. It's time to get everybody focused again. The one day I sat there in the 4th grade class watching before we pulled her again, it was like herding cats, right? Like trying to get everybody back on focus and back on track and then we try to move on to another subject and it's like, oh, okay, let's start this again. So just think about all of the wasted transition time. And that's not anything bad about teachers. That's just the idea of you put 20 to 30 people in a classroom trying to focus on something, it's hurting cats. So think about the things that they have to learn and hit those and then move on with things, because there are learning in life all around you. And that's really what homeschooling kind of becomes for some people. Some people unschool, so aren't using textbooks at all. And that's fine. There's so much learning to be had, especially with the internet at our fingertips, right? There's so many resources that we have available for our kids that when we went to school wasn't available for us. Hello, YouTube and Khan Academy. And I mean, gosh, I think Richard taught himself some physics, and actually he taught himself trigonometry from the internet. Like, he bought a textbook and watched different videos on YouTube and learned trig back when he was going to school. So there is ample information out there. And if you feel you are stuck on something and you're just like, I don't know, there's resources available. It's not opening up an almanac anymore, or what was that book that we all had, like the 36 books in our house that you like never wanted to actually look at? I don't remember. And don't mind me, I'm just gonna give my child some more screen time, because sometimes that's what you have to do. So, oh, this is the reading informational text that I talked to you about with Evan Moore. I love them. But this year, so I got to science. Okay. So when we went back, right, my oldest was kind of behind in math. And so when we pulled her, we were only pulling her for 4th grade. She decided to come home, but she wanted to go back for 5th grade. So we were just going to stick with the same math curriculum that the school was using. So that way, if we just worked through the book together, by the end of it, and her going back to 5th grade, she would still be on track, right? There wouldn't be any kind of loss, because sometimes some of the curriculums hit things a different way, or the way that they talk about it and the way you understand it is just a little bit different. And so by continuing that same math curriculum at home, I felt like it gave her the ability to not miss out on some of those things and to, you know, in quote, stand out when she went back to 5th grade. But COVID distance learning came, and so they're all homeschooled. Okay. And so you may have done distance learning last year. Girl, that I love you. That's not homeschooling. Homeschooling last year wasn't even homeschooling. Like, it was crazy, right? With things closed down and everything. So really try not to base any of this off of last year. That's not what this looks like at all. It's not how our year even looked. You know, like last year was just, right? Okay. But get out of the house, do things, experience things. I'm going to talk about socialization, right? I don't know about you, but I was told to stop talking in school because I apparently talk too much. Or actually, I remember teachers telling us, this is not the place to socialize. Okay, right? So get together with friends, find different avenues to create those social aspects. And you can do that in safe places and in safe ways, right? So find different ways to do that, whether that's weekly meetups. I know some people are talking about homeschooling pods, and those are great. And they work well for a lot of people. And depending on your lifestyle, that might be something that you need. I know for us, we've tried to combine subjects with different friends and different friends, not family, but they feel like family. And that just doesn't really work for us so well, because I like the flexibility of Jack was sick and I don't have to feel like I'm behind and getting X, Y, or Z done, because honestly, he's already meeting most of those milestones. So we have time. We don't have to push it. And sometimes when your kid gets something, then you just move on, right? And so sometimes with different pods and stuff like that, when you create that schedule, sometimes you're kind of almost married to that schedule of the way that learning happens. And flexibility has been the biggest and greatest thing for us, because if a kid is ahead, we can keep trudging ahead. If a kid is behind, we meet them where they're at and help move them forward, right? We can take a break when we need to. We can take a day off. We can go on a trip. We can change the way that we're learning that day. And guess what? If I'm like, this book sucks and I hate it, we don't use it anymore, and we change curriculums and we figure out what we're going to do, right? So take everything that people say, and even what I'm saying to you, with a grain of salt, right? Like, what works for us may not work for you, and that's absolutely fine. There are curriculums out there that I love. I love, 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 love. Bookshark, I love it. Doesn't work for my family. The reading that happens with some of those books, I don't know. But when I was reading The Moccasin Trail and having to speak, like, it was written in a dialect and I had to speak with a drop, like, my head was hurting trying to read these words, right? Because you're reading them phonetically and then saying them phonetically. And it's tiny little print in the book that we had. It just didn't work for me. And so we kept like skipping books. And then I was like, oh, this just isn't working. So everything that everybody uses is different and it works for them in different ways. So don't stress it. But big thing too, if you're filling out a private school affidavit, just remember in the state of California, they cannot be dual enrolled. So as soon as you fill out a private school affidavit, they cannot be in a brick and mortar school, right? That's a whole huge issue. And I know that people are panicking about this October 1st through October 15th date. That October 1st through 15th date is people that didn't enroll in traditional school at the beginning of the school year and have been homeschooling, and this is their annual time to file. Okay, so if you decide to continue keeping your child in a traditional school right now and decide you're not going to pull them out until Christmas break, don't do a private school affidavit. You still can file at that point in time, and you have 2 weeks from when you've pulled them from school. And in the state of California, you don't have to do anything but call the office and say, my child is no longer going to attend. Like, that's all you really have to do. They oftentimes will ask what you're going to do. Are you moving? Are you? And, we said we're going to a charter school. They asked us which one. And I don't think that they really are supposed to. But I didn't mind disclosing that information. It wasn't a big deal to me. But you could disclose that you're going to homeschool because I think that they have to mark something. But you don't have to submit a bunch of papers. You don't have to submit your firstborn to do it, right? In the state of California, it is very simple to say, child is no longer going to school there, right? Okay, but so you do need to fill out this private school affidavit with the state of California within 14 days after doing that. But again, it closes, I think the closing window is in June. So at any point in time during that, you could decide the last week of school that you aren't going to do it. Fill out a private school affidavit. You can. It's just, if you pull them out in May, again in October, if you're going to continue homeschooling, then in October you file because that's your annual marker, right? So don't stress with this October 15th deadline. I know that I've seen some people in different posts and it's like, breathe. And if you've watched this whole time, thank you. I meant to make this into like parts, but I just like word vomit and can't stop myself. So sorry. Maybe you'll make shorter ones with more focused content, but I just have so much that I want to like throw out there at people. And really the biggest thing to throw out there is to breathe, right? The way that standards are set up is that they want children at this age to meet these standards. And so they rolled it back and said, okay, well, if they're here, they need to learn this year. And to do this, they have to learn this year. And they have to learn this year. So we've pushed reading onto kindergartners, which some are fully capable and competent to learn to read, and some developmentally aren't. And that's normal. It's very normal for some kids not to really read until they're 9. And that's okay, right? There are different schools of thought. There's a traditional thought process, right? Or the traditional schooling. There's Montessori, there's Waldorf, there's Charlotte Mason, there's unschooling. There are so many different, and I can't find the word for it, but that just kind of directs the way that people teach and learn and what their homeschooling looks like. And I believe that Waldorf really doesn't push reading until later because developmentally more kids are more ready at that point in time. And I thought I've read studies too that I think it's 3rd or 4th grade, but early readers, late readers, right around third or fourth grade, they're at the same reading level, right? So they kind of merge to what they are. And you're going to have some super amazing kids that just push and have that drive. And you're going to have kids who just, I don't know about you, but my goal in all of this is to raise kids that know things, right? But raise kids who want to learn things, who maybe they don't know the answer to something. And so they want to look it up, right? Nursing school didn't teach me how to be a nurse. Nursing school taught me how to look things up and to figure out the things that I needed to learn. So, same thing with homeschooling. It's teaching them how to have these building blocks and to hopefully foster a love of reading. And I love that she really just reminds us that you have time. And if this becomes your long journey, you have a lot of time with your kids, right? We say only 18 summers that we have our kids. And, you know, by the time that they're 11, you're like, oh my gosh, I only have 7 more summers to go. Like 7. That's insane. But you have time to teach them all the things you want them to know. So breathe. And as you transition and figure it out, take a little time off and make learning look like something different. It might just be having them read a book and maybe write about it, or having them write their own story and develop that creative thought process with that. Your children can publish books. They can self-publish books on Amazon. Just saying. So you can make learning be something completely different and foster whatever learning they have and push them in different areas for further understanding or yeah. So I lost my train of thought. Squirrel, there's motion at the front door. But I just wanted to share all of that with you. And I know that that was a mouthful. But know that there are resources out there, specifically in Sacramento. We have a Brighter Child in Fair Oaks, and it's a whole curriculum store with tons of curriculum. Go in there without kids and sit there and look at the books. Like they have tables in the back. Go pull whatever books you want to look at and sit down and look at them, dig into them, you know, because sometimes some curriculum is more designed for a classroom experience and that might not work for you, right? So dive into different things that feel good for you, right? And learn your child's learning style if you haven't already. And don't pressure them to test too soon, right? Because their learning style has been this, because that's what we've been doing with them. But sometimes when you give them give them a platter of things to like choose from, you really get to see where they're going to flourish. So you've got this. You're not alone. Feel free to message me anytime, especially if you feel like you were just messing it up. You're not. You really aren't. I mean, have you seen some of the comments on people's posts anyways and stuff, right? Like, I mean, just because somebody finished high school doesn't mean that they have whatever knowledge anyways. So I'm just saying, you've got this. Just breathe. See you later.